Hello everyone and welcome to this special one-off podcast here on Access the Animals, where we're going to discuss the future of Assassin's Creed based on what we know as part of the celebrations of our 9th anniversary. My name is Marco, and today, after a number of requests on our social media and on our streams, I am joined by two pretty well-known guests within the Assassin's Creed community. That is Jor and Andy Reloads. Hey guys, how are you doing?
Hello.
Oh,
Thanks for having me.
Thanks as well. I mean, I felt like Mark, I was in one of your fantastic videos then. So this is like one of those surreal experiences. Like, oh yeah,
wow.
We're in it now.
it's a fresh video coming out. I can't wait to get involved.
On the anniversary. That's
yeah.
awesome.
Well, thanks for joining me. Thanks for joining us. It's really a pleasure to have you guys here. We've got, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people actually asking us in the streams, like, when are you going to, like, you should have a crossover, you should have a round table with Andy and Jordan. It's so nice that we are finally able to make this, and especially as part of our celebrations. So thank you guys really for being here.
Yeah, sure.
Cheers, mate. Yeah, thanks for sorting this as well. I know we've just been chatting for 25 minutes beforehand, so it's already a lot of fun. So cheers, mate.
So before we start, classic question, like for the listeners who might still not know you guys, would you like to introduce yourself and what you guys do within the Assassin's Creed community?
Sure. I think the big dog's got to go first. Everyone knows.
The big
really?
dog.
Yeah, come on, mate. Come on.
Yeah, so I started making Assassin's Creed videos around the launch of Origins, because that was the first game that came out when my channel was like kind of doing well. But I of course have been playing the series for longer than that. But to be fair, I do, and that might be the biggest differentiator between us. I prefer the newer games over the older games, and I just really think that with the new style, like going to Egypt, having the sort of RPG elements, maybe a lot of people are now clicking away already. I hope not. But
I hope not.
no, but my content is also really focused on helping people. So where do you find the best weapon? And then of course after launch, what are the new updates going to be about? And that's what I really like about Andy. He already looks beyond that. So, I think it's always interesting to see a new video from you drop, Andy. So,
likewise, mate. Likewise.
That's awesome. So I've been following the series for a while. I think it's always interesting. I think the fact that everyone's favorite game in the series is different really shows how varied the series is. While from the outside looking in, you might be like, hey, they're all open world games in a historical setting, but yeah, there's of course way more going on. And I think it's interesting that we're at a very interesting point in the series right now. Of course, the older gen consoles are kind of left behind, and I kind of used this also in streams before, but I think we're kind of in a Call of Duty situation where we've now been to space with Dawn of Ragnarok in a way. And now people are like, yeah, but I want to go back to World War II, or in this case, I want to go back to being a stealth, being an assassin. While around the Unity and Syndicate, people were like, okay, we get it, right? We want something new, and that's when Origins dropped. So I'm really curious what the next step will be, and we'll of course be kind of discussing that here. So I'm looking forward to it.
For sure, absolutely, mate. I completely agree with everything you've just said there. I think it's a very interesting time that we actually find ourselves as fans in, really. I also think it's very polarized as well, because we do have a lot of people who prefer the older series who are still engaged with the newer stuff. And I think a lot of people are just hanging on for that little bit of hope that this series is going to return to perhaps some of its roots, that they've kind of weathered the storm through this new generation of games, and they're kind of got their fingers crossed and perhaps borderline had enough, and they want to see some of the old kind of mechanics return. Me personally, I'd love to see some more incorporation of some of the mechanics and some of the stuff that actually made this game awesome, But equally, I would say there's a lot of cool, new, interesting stuff that's come out of these new iteration of games, of Assassin's Creed games. And, I'd be lying to myself if I said that I didn't like at least some of the stuff that that has been implemented. So
Same.
I'm one of those where I'm on the fence, really. Like, maybe perhaps I am a little bit nostalgic, really, for previous games. I grew up on the games. I've played every single one of them. I love them. But equally, those things do come to an end. And I think that a lot of the mechanics in the old games did become quite tiresome, very repetitive, and it did need a revamp. And I think it's also gone to the other end of the spectrum here with the new games. And can we find a nice middle which potentially can please both sides of the fence? And I'm really interested to hear both of your thoughts on that, especially with some of the stuff and news information that we've actually picked up in the last couple of months. As for me, in terms of the whole YouTube, I'm a bit of a noob, really. So I kind of find myself here chatting to two Assassin's Creed titans, and so I'm very pleased to be here because I used to watch both of your videos all the time, and then I thought, you know what, let's give this YouTube gig a go and make some stuff. And I've been very lucky that people have been very welcoming, and as Jordan said as well, there's some very generous people out there who like to share some early access kind of stuff with me, which I then pass on to the community. A lot of it very speculative, but I have no idea how they all do it, to be honest with you. But it certainly makes. I have no idea, mate. I'm honestly, I'm terrible with all that kind of stuff. But it makes for very interesting conversations in the community, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I'm very, very grateful to those people who put in the hard work behind the scenes to kind of give us something new to talk about.
I agree, and I think that circling back to what Jordan said, I think that this is going to be a nice roundtable also because we are interested in different aspects of the franchise, different games, different approaches as well. And
that's what I also like about our content. Like you are, Mark, is super focused on the lore, and I learn every time I watch a video, I learn something new. And with the same with Andy, because of course he has people. I'm like, I don't mind. Yeah, but it's awesome, and I totally agree with new stuff to talk about. So I think it's cool, that we all have different perspectives, for sure.
Yeah. So another thing that I wanted to mention to who's watching and listening, word of advice here: we are going to talk about the future of Assassin's Creed from the coming days and weeks to what might happen in the coming years. But we're going to talk about stuff that is going to happen really soon, or we expect to happen really soon. So we are recording a few days before the actual release of this podcast. So what we might be saying today may be confirmed or denied or updated in the coming days. So it wouldn't be the first time. I was thinking that in the week of our anniversaries in the past, there have been already other pre-announcements, like for Syndicate, the pre-announcement that turned the rumored name Assassin's Creed Victory into Syndicate. It happened in the same week of our anniversary. So some other announcements that we might be talking about today, or that we expect to happen today.
You basically want to DM Jason Schreier, don't leak anything. So
please, Jason, don't. Please don't. But I mean, these things happen all the time, so.
But we're in that pre-E3, or it's not called E3 anymore, but we're in that moment, right?
Yeah.
And to get a little bit ahead, but I would be shocked if we already hear something about the potential next game next week. But crazier things have happened. I mean, next week is the Ubisoft financial call, or next week when we record this. So by the time you listen to this, it's already happened. But yeah, things could happen for sure.
Yeah. So, apart from all of that, are we ready to discuss some Assassin's Creed? Shall we start?
Absolutely. Let's crack on, lads.
All right. So, first things first, let's start with what is going to happen in Assassin's Creed Valhalla in May. By the time we're recording this, a few days ago, weeks or days ago, there was a roadmap that described some of the content that was about to happen in April and May. And after Mastery Challenges were released, now...
Unibear as well.
Unibear. The Universe, like that, was one of those content pieces of content that are all in good fun, and sometimes they can be divisive, but they are really like just like some. Fun
You don't have
stuff.
to claim it. You don't have to use it.
It's a laugh, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's for the laugh. Like it's fun, and it's fun how they are making like promotional videos about stuff like this, and looking at this like all serious with the camera going around, and it was so cool.
Agreed. Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, so in May, we know that there's going to be a new building in the settlement in Valhalla called the Armory. And there's an article on the website, on the Assassin's Creed website, that describes that it's going to be the loadout feature, basically. So it will add 5 loadouts of weapons, armor, and skill in this building. And we will be able to create those and use them at any time in the game. But one of the things that I didn't really like is that you have to go back to the settlement all the time if you want to change those.
Is that now officially confirmed then, that we are going to have to return to the settlement?
I mean,
whenever this needs to be used, or is are you talking about loadouts, or is it just to kind of drop the stuff in?
How it's going to work is that you go to this building. It's likely next to the River Raid building.
Yes.
There's still like some space there, and you can like go there and then put your armor weapons of choice there. Then from any point in the game, you can access the things you created in that building. But if you, for example, want to change one weapon in that loadout, you do have to go back. So it's kind of like a hybrid.
Okay. Exactly.
But I was worried that we would have to go back to change our loadout, because that's how the transmog system works, how the stable works, of course. Which, going back to Odyssey for that awesome crossover event, being able to switch on the fly, I was like, why did they ever change this? Sure, it makes sense for the settlement, but give us the option. Like, it's a single player game. Why do we have these constraints? But yeah, it's already like a step in the right direction, I think, for this loadout system.
I do agree, and it's something that I think was missing after playing Odyssey. Is something that when you start playing Valhalla and you don't have it there, it felt like it was lacking somehow. And I'm happy that they're adding it now. But I wanted to ask you guys, do you get the feeling that some of these super useful features, like the loadout feature or other stuff that is added very late in the post-launch, like, do you get the feeling that they are underutilized, like not having them at launch or at the start?
I agree, Marco. Like, I definitely think that these kind of quality of life mechanics in these games, I really do think that they incrementally actually build up over time the more that you actually spend in the game. And I think that certainly makes me enjoy the experience of games that allow me to transmog instantly. It was Far Cry, wasn't it? Was able to just do everything in infantry. I'm not sure.
At launch immediately.
Wow.
Yeah, immediately. Just everything where you can just pop in and out, and everything's nicely organized, and I can just do it there and then carry on with whatever quest or whatever thing I was doing. Don't get me wrong. I think that these kind of mechanics being implemented is good. I think it's a positive thing. But equally, the player base is nowhere near where it was at launch.
Exactly.
And is it really going to have a serious impact at all? Perhaps for those of us who are still engaged in the game. But I think that, is it too little? Is it too late? Is it too much too late? I don't know. I think it's maybe a little bit of a kind of, I wouldn't say marketing ploy, but it's just another little feature there which may be underutilized just because the player base isn't really there too much anymore, to be honest.
But I would argue that these features always drop after launch, because the loadout feature was also added to Far Cry. It's just that the timing is indeed very interesting, and I feel that overall during the Valhalla post-launch. But I do think that that a lot of the quality of life features are just dropping way too late. Like looking at the Origins or the Odyssey post-launch roadmap, like in Odyssey, I was like, they already did these videos with like everything coming next month, and there was always something new, like multiple new things. But I really think that they just did not have the time to plan ahead for Valhalla because they were, of course, in COVID, and they also wanted to hit that next-gen console launch, like they had to deal with Microsoft. And that basically meant that when the game came out, that is when they first had to work on the launch version, because let's be honest, it was pretty buggy when it came out. So I think a lot of people were just working on fixing the game. The river rates dropped in like, what was it? It felt like February or something, and then like while if we look at Odyssey, they had the first they had the loadouts I think already like a few months, and New Game Plus and new mythical creatures, these Lost Tales of Greece that were really fun 45-minute missions. They probably already made them before launch because they had the time, and then they just flipped the switch with every update. So you had always something new to play every week, and it just really feels that Valhalla was lacking that, and that now they're like, okay, what do people want? Let's work on it, because we finally have a working game, or like a game that is in a better state. But I also think it's another problem where Montreal and Quebec, they were not really talking to each other, where looking at the amount of stuff that they had to add to Valhalla, which Odyssey already had figured out, is mind-blowing for me. It's like, I covered both games like extensively, and with Valhalla we basically went 3 steps back, like at launch, and then they were like, oh, a loadout feature, oh, that's what people want, oh, the contracts from Reda. In Odyssey, they already figured out cool ways to make these contracts interesting. In Valhalla, they're still not at that point. And I don't know, it's probably a lack of time, but it's also, I think, if they maybe talk more to Quebec and we're like, okay, how did you guys pull off this amazing post-launch? Then they would already have a list of things that people would want, instead of having to hear that after launch.
I think that hopefully that's not going to be happening in the future. We're going to talk about this a bit later, but now Ubisoft has announced this sort of like cross studio approach between Montreal and Quebec. So hopefully for the coming games, maybe not the next game, depending on who is doing that, but hopefully in the future, this kinks are going to be ironed out, hopefully.
Yeah, let's just hope. Like, we don't know. Indeed, like we're stepping a bit. Like, we want to talk about that at the end of the podcast, but to already say, like, we just don't know what Infinity is going to be. But I would be shocked if that game launches, and so, because we did see the learnings from Odyssey in Immortals, so that was like very interesting to see how they implemented it there. So I hope that indeed they learn from this.
And
apart from the Armory, sorry, Marco, mate, are you going to ask another? No, I don't know if that was going to be your lead-on question, mate. Just what additionally is going to be there, because I'm interested to see what.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I made kind of a sidetrack there.
No, mate, no, love it. It's really interesting, and I think the next couple of years are going to be very interesting for all the points you've raised. But in terms of this Armory update, I'm quite keen to know what either of you think we're going to get additionally, because I don't think it would just...
The River Raid weapons were announced.
Yes.
Yeah. So at one point, you guys might remember that we had the Wayland armor added to the River Raid shop. I think it will be similar to that we just install the update, and then it's going to be a free ad gear, so that's going to be cool. Already, like, pretty soon after the Dawn of Ragnarok launch. Some other weapons as well, like a light bow, I think.
Yeah, there should be a scythe as well.
Yeah, a scythe as well, which is also gonna be cool. But there doesn't seem to be like new River Raid maps yet.
Yeah, looking at the picture, it seems like it's going to be similar River Raids.
So I'm already doing the River Raids now, so I have enough for supplies, so I can immediately buy these weapons when they come out. Unless they like figure out another currency, but they did not do that for the previous armors.
Yeah,
exactly. We will see. It's going to be the same. It's going to.
So we can actually move on to what we can expect. Still from Valhalla, but after May. So You guys mentioned in some of your videos, well, we can for sure expect the second part of Tombs of the Fallen, because it's a story that still isn't.
Do you want to hear my theory about that?
Oh, yes,
Absolutely.
sure.
And it is kind of based on what Andy shared in his video, of course.
Okay.
So totally go check that out for the whole Rollo adventure.
Shout
But
out, mate.
because they're like kind of teasing sort of nuts to Origins, I would not be surprised if the 60 FPS update drops around that time of the Tombs of the Fallen. And like that would be like pie in the sky. I don't think it's going to happen, but I also did not think we would get Odyssey content in 2021, but that they will do something in Odyssey as well. It's coming to Game Pass as well, like very soon. Maybe by the time you listen to this, it's already out, but I don't think, I think they already announced the May titles. So like what if, because maybe they're going to drop in every month like something new in year 2. And then June would be the Tombs of the Fallen Part 2 maybe, with some sort of Origins tie-in. I would not be surprised if that's what they're doing. But
and would you expect that to tie to some new content in Origins as well as the crossover?
Yeah, again, I hope so, but I also don't think that that's going to happen. But again, I was wrong about the Odyssey stuff as well, like because we knew about the Cassandra coming to Valhalla, but we did not know, and that was so awesome. Like being at that pre-launch event where they kind of unveiled Dawn of Ragnarok as well.
Yeah,
it was like, and we get Odysseys. I was like, what? That was like super awesome. Yeah, I love that game. So
also,
going back,
from what all the people who spend time actually in the client, they found Cassandra assets nearly at the start of the last year, before that's nearly a full calendar year before
that's wild,
anything happened, and there's nothing been, as far as I'm aware, has been shared around or discussed further about anything in terms of any sort of Origins crossover. I mean, I would love that. That'd be fantastic.
No, I mean, like you already, like I think the Rollo content might be that, right? Because we see Caesar, we see the elephants and stuff.
I think so. I think you're spot on there, mate. I reckon that is going to be it. I think it's going to be our crescendo, and then we're going to have a lot of questions answered. I hope so, to be honest, because Mark, I've spoken to you about this before, mate, and I do feel that there is a little bit of a carrot on the stick, and I appreciate that's the nature of the business.
Yeah.
Coming back for more. I do get that, but I would absolutely love something substantial here in terms of the story. You know what I mean? Like something to start really scratching that itch for me, because every expansion I don't feel really has added much, and when it has, it's always been quite ambiguous and a little bit confusing. And I'm speaking as someone who's been engaged in this series for a long time, and at times I'm kind of like, what on earth is going on here? I haven't got a clue what's happening right now. Yeah, sure, it all looks lovely, but I haven't got a clue. So I would like me personally for this series to end well. I think to end strong. And for me, that would certainly be closing off the story well. And if we can get some great crossover stuff with this Rollo Origins leak with a little bit of lovely lore there, I think just on looking at it from this point of view, I would enjoy that. And I know they don't want to flog a dead horse with Valhalla, but I think that would be, from what we've seen so far, just a nice solid ending, so people can move on to the next game, the next kind of.
You really? Oh wow. Okay.
Do you think it? Well, this is me saying I think we'll end with Tombs of the Fallen. I don't. Well, I'm not even sure that it will be coming out in the next month or so. But that's speculation. I just think there's a lot of stuff there. I think that is the big substantial piece. But then we also have Niflheim and all that nonsense.
But I would argue that like maybe you are not like really engaged with the mastery challenges, but what they added there, I think in terms of size and amount of content, is on the same level as the Tombs of the Fallen. So
yeah, sure, agreed.
And we have like New Game Plus, and Marco, are you gonna take us there now?
I was about to ask about. It's fine, because I love that these things come naturally in the chat. So I don't feel absolutely bad about that. I was about to ask you guys, and then maybe we'll share some opinions of mine as well. Like you did mention in your videos that there are some rumors, but also something that Jose told you, Jordan, about New Game Plus. So There are references in the game files already, but also Jose mentioned that New Game Plus should happen down the line, but towards the end of the development cycle. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Like the reason why, in short, is that they didn't want people to join New Game Plus, and then of course you have to do the Norway part. You have to go to England. You have to do
Yeah.
one story arc before Reda unlocks, and basically when Reda unlocks, the festivals unlock as well. And for the mastery challenges, you have to be settlement ranked. Like there are a lot of requirements for
Yes.
all the new content. And if you are stuck in this New Game Plus save and they drop a big free update that you cannot play unless you play like 10 more hours in New Game Plus, that's what they wanted to combat. In retrospect, there are a lot of games that do this as well. Like it's not sure Assassin's Creed has like this settlement system which it all revolves around, but for example now in Dying Light 2 they also drop New Game Plus, and yeah, if you want to get the glider again or like you have to play a lot to get back to those things or to get like to a bigger part of the map again. So it's kind of the nature of these games. So I would have argued, because that's kind of what I've been also thinking recently, is does a year 2 even make sense for a single player game? Because when the game comes out, everyone has a lot to do in the world. So then when new content comes out, you check it out, and then you fall back on the thing you were currently doing.
Exactly.
In year 2, everyone has already, if you wanted to complete the game, you've done it by now. Most people that are still around finished the story already. Maybe they only care about the story. So what happens now is that you jump back into the game, you see one update, and then you're like for the mastery challenges, I had a ton of fun. I love them. But it was one stream for me, and then some grinding for the items and getting gold medals. But now it's like on to the like waiting for the next thing. And even in May, we are not even getting quote unquote new content, right? So
I do agree with that. It circles back again to that idea of, you know, releasing content in the second part or in the last part of the post-launch period, and in like having content after 1 year, 1.5 years. I think it's really too much. Like the people have, like most fans, most players have left already towards new stuff.
I think
So
agreed. Agreed. I think people are fatigued, honestly. I think it's a long game anyway. But then if you're
yes.
going to add, I think if you're going to add a whole year 2 onto an already pretty big task of the game, a pretty big mouthful, then you know you are asking quite a lot. Especially you start throwing down some serious cash.
Oh yes, that's true.
For people to require to, you know, the cost of entry is very expensive, and people who were perhaps on the fence about maybe checking out year 2 would have just been completely put off by that large price.
But do you think that's because of the because people are like fatigued, or do you think because the quality wasn't there? Because I would argue that if every DLC was like a home run, everyone would be like, "Yeah, let's go, more content, please."
Sure.
And I think that's kind. I think the base game was not made with the post-launch in mind, and because there was no like, that's why Odyssey was so great. And even if you did not really like it, there were like things to do even if you completed everything, because there was this cool build to chase, or this cool loadout to get, which basically the same, but there were a lot of like different things you could like make fun yourself. And in Valhalla it's really, you have to do a certain activity. But I would argue that if the year 1 DLC was way better, everyone would be like, Dawn of Ragnarok, let's go, when is the next one, right?
Yeah,
And I think that also did not help.
That's a really good point. I think it does feel disjointed and not streamlined, does it? It's like, oh wait, we've got to get a year 2 in here somewhere. Okay, let's do this. And I think that's a really good point. I think I personally, you know, and this is someone who's not necessarily all about the fantasy aspect of stuff. I really quite enjoyed the Dawn of Ragnarok in terms of gameplay. You know, I had fun, and I think people also need to remember that, you know, you do play these games for fun, right? You know, I think a lot of people do get upset, and quite rightly. You know, it is very close to their heart, as it is to all of us. But like that game for me, I enjoyed. Like I sat there and had fun. It's not something that I would perhaps like choose out of all the several options in front of me when it comes to Assassin's Creed content. But when I played it, I enjoyed it, and I think that if there was more expansion similar to Dawn of Ragnarok, and I'm not saying, in Svartalfheim or what have you, but at the similar quality in terms of gameplay and enjoyment, then I think, people perhaps may be more engaged for year 2. For
Yeah,
sure.
this should have been the first expansion.
Probably,
then,
yes.
I agree, man. I completely agree with you. Yeah, I think it's way better than the previous 2.
Yeah.
I think the previous 2 was just like, well, okay. Anyway, on with my week after.
Yeah, and now you kind of see where they can improve, and then you would be like, okay, yeah, this was great. There are some things that they could like maybe expand on, like the Odin powers. Like that's also the problem with year 2.
Sure.
We have these amazing Odin powers. Every time I go back to England, I'm like, do I have to ride on my mount again? I want to fly as a ray. Like,
dude, yeah.
it's so weird
I
that
know.
these are so separate. So yeah, that's also kind of
I
a
do
problem.
agree. Like this kind of content creates this sort of like separation and disconnection in the player. Like having these two different worlds, like the real world and the mythical one. Of course, it's there to create more possibilities for the gameplay, and I really like them in Dawn of Ragnarok. I think that the gameplay in there is the best we've ever had up until that moment. In Valhalla, the stealth was working finally after the patch that was released before it. Traversal was super fast and was amazing. And
But
like,
hold up, I've got to ask you guys, like,
yes.
I think there was several quests where you had to pick up dwarfs. I mean, I was rolling my eyes because that was a part of the expansion for me, where it's like, oh right, another quest here. Let's pop this dwarf on my back and walk up another hill for the next 5 minutes. That those kind of things. I would love to see less of personally, but for the most part, yeah.
But I kind of expected that because Valhalla had a lot of that as well, like the main game. Obviously, you hope they improve upon that. But I think also like in terms of like size, they should not have asked $40 for this.
No,
but if it was like $25, then this is like what you want because you can see the end, right? And with Valhalla, that was like is almost not possible unless you really go crazy.
Do you remember like playing through Valhalla story? And for the most part, I did enjoy Valhalla, and I do enjoy Valhalla. But I don't know if you got this, but there'd be certain, because it was so long, there'd be certain arcs I'd be like, oh my god, how many do I have left to do? Like that's just taken me like 5 hours to do that.
I would look at the table and I would like, is that an arc, or is it like because you could already see the
sure,
the things there, yeah.
No, okay, not just me then. That's
No,
fine.
No.
It's not just you, and also coming out of Odyssey, where the main story didn't go in every single region. You could expect the story arcs in Valhalla to not go in every single region, but actually every region had one, and it was like, and it was also tough to understand which one were like the main story and which were the non-essential one. I'm not gonna call them fillers because they're still part of the story and lore and narrative and
for the main story they were filler. Like for the overall like getting to the end, it was a filler because you would be playing more, but would have been better if it was like, what was that island again in Odyssey where they also showed that at E3. That was like a completely you could like skip that and going there and finding that and knowing that it's a side thing with a lot of dialogue, with a very cool story with multiple endings. That was extra cool. So it would have been way cooler if you could like, hey, I'm in Gloucester, Gunnar is here, what the heck? And then you go do that mission instead of, hey, please help Gunnar while Sigurd is being captured. What the heck, dude?
Yeah.
You must help Gunnar now. You have to. Oh, okay. All right. Sure thing. I completely agree.
And we did talk a bit about Dawn of Ragnarok. So bridging on that, Andy, in some of your videos you mentioned, and even earlier you did mention that there might be some potential content tied to another realm that is Niflheim.
Sure.
So can we really expect, in your opinion, to have mythical content again coming up for Valhalla, and what kind of content would you expect it to be?
That's a great question, Marco, and I would love to give you a definitive answer. Because the honest answer is, mate, I haven't got a clue. But I think with the information that has been unearthed by some real solid people in the community, I think it's very interesting. But the thing is, I don't know if it's been scrapped or not. I don't know if it was initially going to be part of Dawn of Ragnarok. Maybe it was, and then it's just kind of been, okay, we've run out of time here. We need to wrap this up, because I am aware that they did cut off a lot of pieces in the storyline.
Oh yeah,
in the
sure.
Ragnarok. So I don't know if perhaps this Niflheim side quest, whatever you want to call it, is that. But these portals in Ravensthorpe, they've got to do something, right? Right?
I think those are for the river raids. The ones
sure.
you also that
So
will be a way to go to the realms.
So Jordan, do you think then that they've purposefully given us this river raids art with these new weapons and then the Frankia in the background as kind of like to throw us off the scent or something? Because I agree with you. I think these portals have got to be river raids, and it could be announced by the time this podcast comes out.
Which is still weird, because I thought like it's like on one end it's like they have to do something with it. I was like, what the heck? Why are we going to another vault? Like we have one already, right? But on the other hand, it would be really weird for you to have to complete Mastery Challenge Part 1 in order to do River Raid Map 3. Like what? Why?
Yeah.
But I also do not see Vaughn say, hey, or maybe Vaughn is like, let's go to Valka, and that's how you go there. But and there is still that spot that you also talked about, Andy. And I think the biggest, like, even if there are files here and there or whatever, of course those were all true in the past. But the biggest thing is official. At the end of Dawn of Ragnarok, you get a tease. Like, if they cut that, why put that? Because it was kind of weird. It was like, did we have to go back to that shelter? I think we did, right? Or something. But we already saw the credits, so they could have, like, of course, we are not game developers, but I would imagine if they really cut a 4th DLC or whatever, they could have just, like, ripped out that cutscene where it's like, hey, Loki is free. Are we spoiling everything? Sorry, but
it's okay. It's okay at this point.
Okay, I mean, it's not really a spoiler for the story of Dawn of Ragnarok.
No.
But like, and I would not be surprised, and maybe I'm already going a bit too far, if that's also a like way to kind of have a sort of mission for Rift.
Well, that's a nice idea. I like. That's a really good. I really like that, mate. I haven't thought of that, to be fair. Yeah, that's decent. I think I could see them definitely teasing the follow-up game to, take us down that path with Basim. It's a nice, easy transition into the next game.
Oh, yeah.
That's decent. Yeah, nice.
And we saw that at the end of the Atlantis DLC as well. Obviously, we still don't... Do we know, Marco, what happened to Otso?
No, we do not. Well, we kind of know in that, like, Valhalla has... in the documents in the modern day, there's only a reference to an interrogation, but you cannot listen to it. And then there was like this tabletop game called Brotherhood of Venice, and it's so weird that there is also Berg's story in there. The continuation is in there.
Wait, what?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure whether to call it a spoiler, but again, the game was released a few months ago.
No, I'm curious now. I'm not gonna like. I mean, that board game looks cool or anything, but I just want to know this story.
It is an amazing game. Sometimes it takes too much to play, but it really feels like an Assassin's Creed game on a board game. But yeah, in there is an expansion dedicated to the modern day. It's called Tokyo 21. So the events are supposed to take place in Tokyo in 2021. So after Odyssey, and well, I think it's like it should have been before Valhalla, but then the game came after. It's a mess.
Yeah, because of COVID, I think that got delayed.
Because of COVID, exactly. And the story about Otso is basically that he appears to be fine. He doesn't have any paralysis or anything, and it seems that he was cured somehow by the staff, by the staff of Eden. But Layla was holding the staff, so I don't know why the assassins would heal Otso. But I mean,
this goes back to what Andy was saying earlier. I just want to understand things, because let me get this straight. We had to, in Odyssey, finish everything, do a sort of free Layla mission to get to the fate of Atlantis, complete those 3 episodes to give us an ending. Then we have to buy a board game, an expansion to that board game, and then we know what happened with Otso while we see Layla in Valhalla, but we don't know what happened to this person like she captured. What the heck is going on?
What is happening right now?
Yeah, the thing is, like, I was talking with some friends in the last couple of days and comparing how the Assassin's Creed franchise and the stories and the characters are handled recently, and how they are handled differently, at least recently in the Marvel shows, and to a degree in Star Wars as well. Like, the characters that you see in the TV series, they are meaningful to the main releases that are the games, that are the movies, and vice versa. While that is still not really happening in AC. Like, the characters from transmedia are confined to transmedia. So, for example, the only character that did not, like, that was an exception to that was Daniel Cross, who started in the comics and then appeared in Assassin's Creed 3 in the modern day, but it wasn't amazing in there. But it happens the other way around. So characters from the main games end up in transmedia, and sometimes you never hear from them again. That this is what happened with Otso Berg. Well, Otso Berg started in transmedia, then went to the games, and then ended up in the transmedia. And it's very difficult for fans of the. It's always very tough, I think, also for the developers to. How can you send a character to transmedia from the games and then have them reappear, and the fans that are only playing the games, they might not know what happened to those characters. So it's really
do you think that when they made the ending to Fate of Atlantis that this was the plan? Like, something must have changed, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, I think
so. That's weird. That's still
it is. Weird. It is weird, and I think that COVID scrambled all the plans, if there were any. I think that, and again, like you mentioned earlier, the games, at least the last few games that were done, spearheaded by a main studio, and you can really see and feel that there's no connection or no early plan between Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla. It seems like the devs of the new games were picking up what was left by the devs of the most recent game, and I think that the devs in Valhalla did a good job in tying up what was very much scrambled from the past games, but yeah, they started from a very difficult situation. Like the ending in Fate of Atlantis, not everyone had played that part because not everyone plays the DLCs, and the modern day part in Origins and the first civilization part in Origins that tied directly to the main story in Valhalla, it was optional. Like especially the first civilization part, the 6 temples and the empirical truth, that was optional, but it was telling, hey, there's this new catastrophe happening on Earth, and people that didn't play the optional part in Origins didn't know about this. And the modern day and first civilization part in Odyssey did not really pick up on that. So there were some inconsistencies here and there, and I understand the reactions by a lot of fans, you guys included, saying, hey, I don't understand what is happening here. What is happening in general, but also how characters are ending up. Like, what is happening to them?
Yeah, sure.
But I did like, and that's what you see when, for example, the Valhalla team who created like the whole connections with the mythical arc and how that was all like interweaved. It was super awesome. And then you see, okay, they have this game to focus on, and then they can nail it. But it's like there's so many moving parts. So I totally get it. It's just like an ending of a DLC, and then we see one character, and then the other is like gone. Like that was kind of weird, but. like you said, I do like it. For example, when in the comics, I think you could already see that it was called Odin's Side, what Eivor was going to use, and all those.
Yeah.
So there are like a lot of like cool connections, and I really hope that with Infinity, it's going to be a clean slate.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not going to be everything that happened before. It did not exist, but because they're now working together more, hey, Darby is way more hands-on, hopefully with multiple projects instead of only Valhalla.
I hope so. Yeah.
And that can hopefully lead it in a better direction. But that's, I think, also where the problem with the Valhalla DLCs came from, where you just have like another team coming in. They did not have, sure, they made some parts for Valhalla, but they were not in charge of Eivor's journey. So when you get to a DLC, you have a character that's basically nothing. Like there was no development for Eivor in Paris or in Druids whatsoever. And that's so different. When I played Ghost of Tsushima, the Iki Island DLC around the time that Siege of Paris came out, and that's of course the same main team, right? And they, like, even in this DLC, they went back to his past, to the main character's Jin, and like even if you like really like the first game, you would learn a lot of different things, and that would like entice you to play the DLC more than this was just like a side track and not really needed.
Do you think people are really interested in the progression of the story in the DLCs, or do you think it's just like another bit of hack and slash fun, really? Because, well, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it, because I certainly am, of course, but I just don't know what to think. Really.
I think it's always a very difficult balance to reach, because and I think we've seen like some of the discussions on Dawn of Ragnarok especially were on that topic. Like, do you and Fate of Atlantis was the same. Like, would you like the story to continue? So this means that the continuation of the story is mandatory for fans or for players of the new game to understand what is going on, like Fate of Atlantis, or do you prefer to just have like an independent story that you could just play on your own and you have fun with it? It adds to the story, to the lore, but it's not mandatory. It's always difficult to find a balance.
I know, this is the thing. I'd be really interested to hear their thoughts on it. Do we improve actual game mechanics and different things that you can do in these DLC expansions, to put out some awesome trailers and encourage people back with new armor sets and weapons and different things that you can actually do in the game? Or, do we prioritize that, or do we, just kind of leave the story to the side because that's going to come next in the big game?
But I think I think, like, even though we did not like Legacy of the First Blade, like it made a lot of bad decisions, and like forcing the kid on you and stuff, like that was like not a good way to go about things. But I do think you could like access it pretty early on, but it still had like a huge impact, and that's I think interesting. Where in the Siege of Paris and Druids DLC, we are basically a random character looking at a story that is happening in front of us, while we are not seeing any progression. And I still think they would be able to do that with Eivor without having people already finish the game. And with Dawn of Ragnarok, you had to be very high level. You had to. I mean, they had multiple warnings. Hey, if you did not play the mythical story yet, do that. But then you get into Dawn of Ragnarok and you expect the same layers we had in the main game mythical story, and it just wasn't there. So yeah, and I think looking back at the Hidden Ones DLC from Origins.
Yeah.
That was $10. Like, looking back at how much they asked for the Valhalla DLC, $10 for a new island. Like, so many, like, people are still, it's short. Yeah, but it's only $10, and it did advance the story in very interesting ways.
Sure.
And I would prefer that, because at the end of the day, the people that are going to buy the DLC, going to play it, are the most hardcore people. I never really talked to someone who's like, yeah, I played the DLC before finishing the game. Like, I don't think a lot of people do that, actually.
I hope so. It's the same for me. Like, DLCs are there to further the experience. It means you enjoy the main game and so you want more. So
Yeah.
to
Well,
me,
with
it
that,
feels super weird to play the DLC. I know that maybe it's a marketed experience. You would like to go to Ireland because you like Ireland and so you want to go there.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't know. It's
do you think that it's going to be replicated then in future games, that we're going to get season passes or these just separate DLCs? Especially, my interpretation is the majority haven't really been too satisfied with it, either from a gameplay point of view or a storyline point of view. So it kind of, and if it's too expensive, what's the bloody point in them then? Really, surely assets in terms of actual people working at the studios can be better reallocated elsewhere if the reception from the community isn't good. But like, this is me just going on from what we're talking about and speaking to other people in the community. I mean, I don't have the actual sales figures or anything of the sort, but I would really be interested to know.
I personally just don't think that Valhalla is a good example because because if we look at Origins and Odyssey, like I loved the DLCs, even though Legacy of First Blade did not hit, but the Hidden Ones, Curse of the Pharaohs, the Fate of Atlantis, the amount of content you got there, like that's wild. And we have to remember that from a business perspective, working on DLC and then asking half the asking price of the main game is like way more profit because
yeah, sure, of course.
Absolutely.
So that's still important to keep in mind.
True. Could it put people off future installments as well, though, if this is how people kind of feel, I wouldn't say mugged off, but well, you're paying a significant cost and it's not a fraction of the experience that you got in the main game. You're going to be like, well, I'm not going to do that again, am I?
I think that might put off a few fans, but I think that Ubisoft, I think that one of the big talking points all across Dawn of Ragnarok was the price point, like all the time since its release. And up until the few days after it was released, up until people stopped talking about it, it was the price point. It was always the price point. Amidst other things, of course, but I think that fans will remember this. Apart from the mythology stuff and the story that wasn't amazing, but also for the price point.
Significant cost.
I think we should be looking, because we already spent a lot of time on Valhalla. I want to say one more thing though, and I think that's going to be very interesting to see when we get to Rift, for example, or when we get to Infinity. What I like, even though of course Odyssey was very divisive, I think a lot of people look back on that game that enjoyed it, loved it. Like they wanted more of that. And when Valhalla was announced, they thought it's gonna be more of that. And I'm just not sure if what we were just talking about with the sour taste, I think most people that stopped playing Valhalla left with a sour taste. They did not leave like with Odyssey, where they were like, oh, I had a lot of fun, and sure, I did not do everything because it was a huge game, but I want to see where this goes. And that's where, because the hype for Valhalla was insane. That's like the highest hype for any Assassin's Creed game. I think it was really, of course, because of the setting, but also because of the love for Odyssey. And I'm just curious, because I also think having a very big main story in Valhalla, that did not help the post-launch. Because why would people buy the DLC if they did not finish the main game? Like what we were talking about. If they made that way shorter, then sure, you maybe had a lot of side content left, but then you would maybe be more inclined to continue playing. Otherwise, you're like, why would I sink more hours into this?
I think they know that, I think we're going to see some real significant changes and some real old school stuff in this next iteration of the game. I think they have to really start pushing that USP of Assassin's Creed, because it's a stealth game. That's where it's fundamentally created and what it was built around. And I think
still though?
Yeah, well, this is it. It's not, is it? I think if they can incorporate a lot of the old school stuff and then throw it together, weave it into something with the modern techniques that they've put together in their RPG games, then I think you're going to get a lot of people intrigued and back on board for it, to be honest with you. I certainly would. Like, from my point of view, this is a long game. This is a long Valhalla game. And, John, you're absolutely right, dude. People have come into this game, they've given it a go and gone, bloody hell, it's just 60, 80 hours. That's that's a working week. Well, that's nonsense. I'm not going to be doing that, and I've perhaps left with that sour taste, as you mentioned. And I think that if you can bring people back on board with a lot of assassin-y kind of vibes, with perhaps a few RPG vibes as well, I think you are going to what would be the right word? Re-engineer. Can you? I'm not saying it right. What's the
Re-engineer?
Reinvigorate.
Oh, okay.
I guess what I would say. The community on either side of the fence. That's what
going to argue though that this is where we were before the launch of Valhalla, because they were also saying the right things. They said, "Hey, we have
you're right. Yeah,
That's true.
and I don't think like we're gonna talk about Rift. I do think that it's gonna be way more than what you're talking about. But I also get, and I saw people talk about this in the comments as well. They heard this before, like the social stealth was back, for example. Yeah, we're really focused on stealth this time, and blah blah. Yeah. It wasn't the case, and I think that's the problem with Valhalla. It was trying to do everything, but I personally think that they just have to be. There has to be like 2 games, basically Resident Evil. Have the remakes, have the new first-person horror games. And I think that is the way forward, because you cannot, and that's what Valhalla showed, you cannot appease both players, because, Marco, like, I would imagine that you, of course, prefer the older games, right?
What? More oriented towards them, but I really do like some of the features in terms of gameplay. Sometimes I have more gripes with the narrative, of course, but I would like to see some more contained kind of games. We're gonna talk about this when talking about Rift, but yeah, I think that I'd be interested in seeing this new, more compact kind of experience that the rumors are talking about for Rift, to see if fans are going to be actually interested in this, because now the average Assassin's Creed fan has been trained to expect huge games, like since Origin, since 2017. So now it's going to be very interesting to see how fans are going to react to, if the rumors are correct, to a smaller and more focused kind of game. Because
it's going to be a rogue type Assassin's Creed game, guys. I'm saying it now. I'm saying it's going to be a 40-hour.
Speaking of this, we're getting close to.
And I was curious. 40 hours. What else?
I reckon 40 hours.
Oh, sorry.
It's going to be Assassin's.
No, don't worry about it, Mark.
Assassin's Creed, a proper assassin-based old school stuff. That's
40 hours. I think is still like pretty. I mean, Dawn of Ragnarok was going to be 40 hours. So are they saying 40 hours, or is it actually going to be 40 hours?
I know nothing, but this is what I'm saying. Okay?
Yeah, of course.
So talking about this and what we are hoping and expecting to see in the new game that has been mentioned, are we expecting some kind of announcement in the E3 or not E3 anymore window?
Should we go over the sort of rumor or what we know? Like still all a rumor, but it's like from Jason Schreier, from Eurogamer.
I'm calling it rumors, but it's not really a rumor, because like.
Do you have them in front of you, or should I?
Yeah, I have. Nice. About Rift, you mean?
Yeah. Let's establish what we know.
Yeah,
first.
let's get into AC Rift. Assassin's Creed Rift is the rumored or leaked, let's call it leaked, new game that should be announced at some point. It should be the next AAA or supposed AAA game, mainline game in the franchise. The leaks and rumors by Jason Schreier, he mentioned that it is a DLC. It was a DLC for Valhalla turned into a main game. It should be starring Basim from Valhalla. And another rumor, not by Jason Schreier, but by Eurogamer, mentioned that we will play at least in Baghdad. The project was or still is, maybe. I mean, it is codenamed Rift because it was, I think, Andy, you mentioned, but that in a conference call in an investor's call, there was somebody that actually answered call. We're not talking about Rift or something like that. So.
Yeah, it was the chief financial officer, Frederick Dumont. He confirmed that himself without being prompted in the financial call.
Yeah,
so I think that's what they're calling it internally for sure.
Yeah, that's the internal name.
And you found the file, so yeah, I think
you found the files,
and it's in the game files as Rift. So I think that.
Quick side note, by the way, what's always funny when we get like assets or something for upcoming Ubisoft games, we like download them from a Ubisoft Press website, and there they also use the code name, so it was Meteor all the time with. So that's when you know, we were right all this time, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Its codename Rift doesn't mean that it's going to be the final name when it's going to be announced. And the rumors mentioned that the game should be released end of 2022 or early 2023. And then I think all of us mentioned in our videos that Carlo Rota, the voice actor for Basim and Loki, shared a picture where he was recording or something, and he was in his motion capture suit. And Andy, you mentioned also that there are references in Valhalla's game files for some tests for Rift.
For sure, absolutely. I think Ped is the man who found that. If you guys don't know who Ped is, he's this magician who has found all sorts of stuff over the last year in the game files, which have just turned out to be true. I don't know how he does it, amongst others, but his track record is stellar, and he found all of these references to Rift and parkour and Baghdad and to the names of Ubisoft testers whose jobs are in Ubisoft to actually test these new worlds that they're creating. And he found that person's name associated with this world testing game file associated with Rift. So it all seems to be kind of adding up, really.
Yeah, and I took notes from your video, and like some of those tests, they were about stealth, social blending, and parkour. So this is some of the things that the old fans are looking for, especially.
Absolutely, I think any improvement on the stealth and any of those kind of mechanics in Valhalla is needed, because I think the assumption is because Basim is speculated as playing this main role as the protagonist in this next game, that I think there's going to be a lot of reuse from Valhalla assets, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of mechanics taken from Valhalla, because all the models are there. So I think any improvement on any of these stealth, assassination, parkour mechanics.
I also think that's why they improved the things in Valhalla.
Yeah, agreed, mate. Absolutely. That's a really good point. I think they're just constantly improving that base, so it's easy to transfer over to whatever comes next,
Yeah, and then they get feedback immediately in the live space with Valhalla, and then they can implement that immediately in Rift. It's like a win-win. But that's where, don't you guys agree, like, because it was a Valhalla DLC, even if they implement all these more old-school features, parkour, I'm not sure how they can improve that more, because these past 3 games were basically the same. So unless they're going to do crazy shit, maybe in the city, like that they have cool ways we can go like climb buildings or something. But in the regular movement, I would be shocked if we see suddenly like a Unity style parkour system.
I think with this Rift game, if it is going to be set in Baghdad in that time period, I think it is going to be focused on a dense city. So I think that if people are going to be playing this game, they're going to be expecting that je ne sais quoi when it comes to parkour in cities. And if that's Baghdad, then I think it definitely needs to be improved, because I think that's going to be an eyesore, isn't it, really? Imagine if you jump into Baghdad and you're still played with the same parkour movement as Valhalla. I think that's just going to be the first thing people are going to notice. And I think that drastically needs to be
Yeah, I do hope that as well, because another thing that was mentioned is that this is going to be a smaller scale kind of game. So it's going to be a denser kind of game in a specific environment, and we expect Baghdad to be there. So, like you mentioned, it's like fans. A lot of fans commenting on this are saying what Jordan was mentioning. Like, if this builds off Valhalla, how can the navigation and the parkour be so different? But at the same time, it really will it will come in front of your eyes immediately. Like you will see it if it doesn't work in a city environment, especially if it's going to be vertical enough. So
right, absolutely.
So I do hope that they're going to improve in that. But how much time did they have? I wonder when they started the development on that, because
this is why I think it's going to be later and more focused on next year, to be honest with you. And then, Jordan, just before we start Chinwagon, you mentioned that Avatar will be their main focus for that Christmas window at the end of the year, and I think
they have a ton of games.
On, mate. Yeah, I think
they have a ton of games. Yeah, it's just that usually Assassin's Creed games hit in the holiday season, and like Valhalla could have used the extra months as well. So why would it be different now? That's why I'm still like, because there are just a few games. I went to my barber recently, and he plays only Call of Duty, and he bought Assassin's Creed. Like that's like on another mainstream level. That maybe Avatar will reach that if the movie is good and people go out and buy it, and they're like, wait, there's a cool game about it as well. But not a lot of games, let alone Ubisoft games, have that. So having that in the Christmas season is going to be absolutely massive. But I hope that they go for this was first a DLC, potentially, because in another timeline, if for some reason, because the rumor is that they turned this into its own game because they're simply having a lot of trouble with development. I recently made a video on Watch Dogs and how that's likely done, or like I'm not sure if they're working on that, because almost all the big names that are noted on the Wikipedia page are gone. And the creative director on Legion, he's now the creative director on Divinity. And you're hearing just a lot of bad stuff about the things that are happening behind the scenes. And they were like, okay, we need to have something big for Assassin's Creed. Hey, we have this cool... I thought it was always like a bad idea to have this be a DLC. It sounded kind of weird to go from turning into a raven to Baghdad. Like, that's like a weird thing. But sure, it made sense, because normally a new mainline game has new characters, and now we're like building on what was established with Valhalla. But I hope they take the extra months, because we saw that with Valhalla. But it's probably not going to be a game where Reda exists, right? It's not going to be a game where we have a post-launch trailer. Like, I think that's going to be the big difference. And I am curious what like, because I think a lot of people have been like, I want Assassins again. And they have to show up for this. Because if this doesn't do well, and of course it's on Ubisoft as well, if they... because, again... It was probably planned for later this year, like at the end of year 2. So if they... it was like December 2021 when they, according to the rumors, decided this is going to be a full game. They likely brought in some teams to expand the project. They had a higher budget. But you would think that, they cannot make like a huge game out of it. And of course, it doesn't have to be huge. But when you think of a mainline Assassin's Creed game, you do think that, hey, there are some things that... Rogue makes a lot of sense, but Rogue was like full price as well, right?
Yeah. So, I think maybe $10 less. It was like 50 or 60, something like that.
I think, Marco, you earlier said that Assassin's Creed fans are just now a bit tuned to these long marathon games, with these season passes, and I think, is that working? I mean, Valhalla certainly did a shed load of money, but will people... As Jordan, you said as well, are people going to come away from this Valhalla experience a little bit salty? And can they rinse and repeat the same kind of format they've done with Valhalla here? And I think they can't. So I think that it's going to be a bit of a rogue installment with some of these old school mechanics and building off Basim's early life, going on these speculative rumors, which I think a lot of people would be. Me certainly, I'd be interested to see. How he turns into Loki, or how that kind of manifestation of his kind of personality and Loki itself kind of comes together, and then following his route through to become a hidden one, an assassin in that time period. I think personally, that sounds brilliant, and I'd be really interested to know more about it. And equally, I think if it's a shorter game as well, I think that's actually a good selling point, quite frankly, considering what we've had, in the last couple of years. I'm not sure if people do have. Maybe they do. Maybe both of you do. You need to tell me otherwise what your opinions are on this. I'm keen to hear them. But do people have that amount of time to spend 300-400 bloody hours on a game? I mean, that's a bit kind of dramatic. But do they honestly, really? And would they much prefer a shorter sized game with some impactful storyline, with some well refined, well made mechanics, which is good fun, and good gameplay, like we saw in Dawn of Ragnarok? I mean, I'd certainly prefer that myself. I'd be interested to hear what you both think about that.
Same. Really. I absolutely agree with that. In that such a game that is going. I'm longing for a shorter game because coming from the beginning, or I'm a long-time fan, so I remember even probably too fondly the old games and whatnot. So I'm really keen in seeing how AC can it really be still can it still be a game, can it still be a franchise that produces a game that is limited to, I don't know, 20 to 30 hours or 40 hours or whatnot. And I'm really keen in seeing this because it seems, for hardcore fans and longtime fans, it seems like the stars seem to be aligning in that. Like, this is a game about a character that should take place when this character is not only tied to the Isu and whatnot, but he's a proper assassin, not somebody that is looking at the assassins from the outside. Like, if he's an assassin, he's going to do assassinist stuff. So the gameplay should be tuned towards that kind of goal. So and we're going back to the Middle East, so it feels like a lot of things that the hardcore and longtime fans might be there. But again, like Jordan was saying earlier, if this is not going to be successful,
it's the end, I think.
It can be, like Ubisoft might not follow up on that kind of fantasy in the future.
Unless they do an AC1 remake, which I still think is the best way to to approach this, because then it's everyone has nostalgic feelings for that, so that helps, and people know what that game is. It's so weird. Why haven't they done that yet? Why are they figuring Resident Evil has many remakes already out? But yeah, I totally agree, and I can see it go both ways, and I might be more interested in the reaction and the sort of hype around it, because we as content creators can very easily see, okay, Dawn of Ragnarok, not a lot of people cared about that. The Valhalla reveal, a lot of people cared about that. We will be able to tell if the BASM game is gonna hit. Of course, we will hear it as well, but I'm always of the mind that you mostly hear the vocal minority.
Yeah,
and
that's
with the recent games, it has always been, I want them to go back to the Assassin's Creed games, blah, blah, blah. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, highest selling game, the first title to reach 1 billion. And again, Odyssey was the most successful game after that. So there are a lot of fans for that type of game. But personally, I hope that Infinity will talk to those fans, and that hopefully this BASM game, that people are going to show up for it, that it's going to be that Call of Duty, now we're in space, let's go back to World War II, that people have been asking for it.
Yeah.
And then at one point when we're at World War II, we had a couple of games like that. We want to go back to the sort of more fancy side. I hope they already talk to those two audiences at the same time, or earlier than that, but it will be very interesting. I'm just super curious to see, but it's not gonna be a fair shake, I think. It's not them really making an older game.
No.
Yeah, so it will be interesting, and I can see that people are wait, Valhalla was 100 hours. and this game is like the same price, and it's like 30 hours. What the heck? I'm not gonna buy that, and it looks like Valhalla. What the heck? So that could be another way, but I really hope that they can, in this reveal that is hopefully coming in June or whenever, that they can show why this is a new game, why we should care. And I really hope they focus on the assassin, the old part, the things that people were missing, and are not trying to have a very in-depth skill tree or levels or something like that. Just don't do that. Yeah. Just see if this is what people still like, and then go from there.
Yeah, I do hope it's going to be something like that, like trying and replicate the older Assassin's Creed experience and see if people still like that. Because it's always like you mentioned, it's like a lot of fans are still buying the games, and it's more like the hardcore fans, me included, are a vocal minority in that. Like you can
maybe
see...
not. Yeah, I think so, but maybe this Basim game blows up, and then Ubisoft is like, okay, what the heck, hey you guys. But I think Infinity, and that's of course where we're gonna talk about next. But it's gonna be fascinating to see because going from, of course, Unity was not the best example, but that was like the first next gen only game. Of course, it came out with Rogue, but like Origins was the true. I think this is going to be a Unity to, or like a Syndicate to Origins moment with Infinity. So I'm really curious which direction they're gonna go in, and I really think that a lot of people are like, live service, like you're already playing a live service for one, and second, I think the crossover with Cassandra perfectly showed. Sure, I thought they could like maybe expand more on that, and there was more to be desired, but as like a sort of one step, I think having Infinity and going to settings that we normally would never go to because they would not fit a full game, being able to do that now, and maybe Rift is being looked back on as the first proper Infinity expansion, where we go, we step into his shoes, and we see this. Again, I don't think that we would go to Baghdad for like a full big game, like a mainline game. But now we're able to go there, and
you can kind of actually. It's a really good point. You can kind of look at these DLCs as like these mini kind of ecosystems, these kind of places that you can visit in a short period of time, I suppose, and complete. And could this be some sort of A/B and testing by them in understanding what works well, what doesn't work well? And then how can we take the things that work well and then put them in these small different kind of levels in this upcoming Infinity kind of catalog of different eras. I think we're going to talk about AC Nexus, the VR stuff, a little bit later. But am I right in saying that that's quite similar in the sense that there's different kind of levels or different areas that you'll be able to visit to in certain amounts of time? And I guess this all sounds to me that there is a lot of they're doing a lot of testing, they're doing a lot of thinking about it to kind of bring it all together into this Infinity package, which I've got to be honest with you, I know we don't know too much about it yet, but I'm pretty optimistic and I'm very intrigued to know more, to be honest.
I think it's... Sorry, Marco, you can go.
No, you go on.
Okay, I think it's just like real short. It's just awesome that instead of making another game in another setting, they're actually trying something new. That's what has me a bit excited about it, which could totally go wrong, like Breakpoint or like Legion, but it could also be a very exciting new experience. And after 3 sort of similar games, sure, they had their different elements, but you could look at this like a trilogy. It's time for something new, right? So,
can you imagine like maybe every quarter you get 2 new episodes or 2 new things to visit in time with a different assassin or different storyline that you can kind of dip into. I like the idea of that, to be honest. I think it's a little bit fresh, it's a little bit different, if that is what's planned, right? If that's what we're going to go with, I think it'll be interesting to.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, like the way in which Infinity seems to be built, at least according to the rumors. So we're gonna talk about it later, but it's interesting to imagine different kind of stories and games of different sizes, because like we mentioned earlier, like now fans are used to like huge games. And that's
Sure.
all that AC can be recently. So I do understand why you're calling Rift a potential test, because this is like a smaller kind of game that could be like the smaller kind of experience in Infinity in the future, and it's kind of like the evolution of the approach that Ubisoft seems to have taken in the past, like with Valhalla. I mean, in the investors calls before Valhalla, if I recall correctly, it was Yves Gilmore, somebody else that mentioned that they wanted to have experiences that are unities within an Odyssey. So like it was mentioned,
Right,
like having like for Valhalla, that was the story arcs, like 2 to 3 to 4 hours story arcs contained within a huge experience. So like there was like tiny games within a huge experience that was Valhalla. And now this is taken to a different level. Like in Infinity is like tiny games within a huge experience that lasts for a year. So that's going to be interesting. And like you mentioned earlier, I think, well, I'll let Jordan answer, and then we can move on to Nexus.
Sorry. Yeah, I agree. I didn't know what the question was.
Okay. Oh yeah, it was like. Oh, you go on.
It was like the idea of kind of maybe you jumping into the Animus and being like, right, where am I going to go now?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you could head to Japan for a 10, 15-hour storyline, etc. Or then you could jump back out and then, you know, head to the Middle East or wherever it would may be. And then perhaps throughout the year, you could have, you know, these larger packages, which are then kind of distributed by Ubisoft, which come out in development. I think it's an interesting concept because it's kind of an evolution, perhaps, of maybe the DLC or season pass, where you could actually, in theory, have these regular packages or storylines that are kind of released throughout the year to different places to perhaps keep it fresh. But then the question is, does that become too sporadic? Are people not anchored down because there isn't one protagonist that you can stick with in the storyline? Does it get a little bit kind of flimsy? Is it, you know, are you emotionally invested in it or not? And I think that's kind of also an interesting point. Or do you play as someone who is, you know, outside the Animus? Do you customize yourself? Like, I know there's nothing, by the way, nothing. No one said that, by the way. That's me. This is me spitballing here. But how do you maintain that kind of connection with the character that you're playing if you're just jumping all over the shop around the world in different kind of storylines?
Yeah. I mean, if we're looking at like live service games, how they're doing it, they're really focused on seasons. So what if there are like seasons in one setting, and then with two characters or whatever, a male and a female character,
that's a really good idea.
Yeah, and then you just during that season you can experience that story, and then maybe at the start you only have one mission, but then a few weeks later you get another one. But if you just join at the end of the season, you can play everything in one sitting. Like something like that might be cool. And then next to that you have a multiplayer experience. Like with Ubisoft going all the way on free to play, they're making all these games that are already out. I'm like, why aren't they making an Assassin's Creed free to play game? Like it's just
I know.
so obvious. They even did multiplayer before. They did PvE. They did PvP. Bring that back or do something with that. We have a game like Genshin Impact that is basically Immortals or Odyssey, but like an anime type game. And why aren't they so? Because that's where we kind of what we kind of talked about with year 2. Like there has to be something to fall back on. And I would not be surprised if Infinity is gonna be this arcade where you have like multiple machines and you can just like jump in and play certain things, and then maybe grind out some levels for if you like more the RPG route. If you want to then do like a more stealthy mission or something, I hope they do it like that. And with like normally I would be like, that sounds very ambitious, but with them really dropping. I think that Infinity is the only like mainline game in development, while normally like during the Origins development, Odyssey started, and like there's always been 2 mainline games in development, with Rift of course not really counting because it was a DLC. So they have the resources, and I really hope that they let just like the Quebec team take the post-launch learnings, what they are really like on top of that. And if they are able to add things onto the game very often, have Montreal maybe focus more on sort of story content here and there. And I really think it's gonna be like that, where we're already engaged and then bam, what the heck, there's a crossover event next week. I think it's gonna be like that, and that could be really cool.
Just look at the reception with the crossover. I think it got people back in. A lot of people were interested in it. And can you imagine similar stories like that throughout the Assassin's Creed universe? You know, drop in so frequently. You'd have, well, we've got this next. Well, we've got this next, and you know, we're going to be following this particular assassin in this story in this particular age, which, you know, they went on to find this, and then you follow that story through to do that, and you can perhaps get rewards at the end of finishing each section or whatever it may be, and then maybe you could use those rewards in multiplayer in some aspect. I don't know, but you know, I think it's interesting, and I'm optimistic about it, but. And you guys, talking to you guys about it, actually makes me even more optimistic about it. I think it sounds like a lot of fun. I hope it happens.
It could be really cool. I mean, the problem now is, and why the crossover event worked so well versus Dawn of Ragnarok, I'm not even sure if it was like... it totally had to do with the characters, but it also had to do with the fact that it was free. And what you see with all these live service games is that they give all their content away for free. If you look at an Apex Legends, what they add every season, it's like... what the heck? This is the same as a full price game. What you basically are getting every 3 months or something, and that's the problem with Assassin's Creed now kind of being in this in between, and Far Cry as well, where they still need to make money via the old model. While it would have been way cooler if everyone could access the Dawn of Ragnarok powers, because then every year 2 update had the Raven power and maybe cool new puzzles with that. And now it's trapped in this paid expansion. There's like a paywall, and it means that all the free content cannot use those very cool things. And I hope that Infinity doesn't have that.
Agreed. It gets me thinking as well. Then, if they are going to transition into this model, then there's got to be some sort of implementation of a battle pass. In these other games, you know. So what's the benefit going to be for people who do decide for that particular season to pay for the battle pass? And that in itself, I believe, is there's various levels of battle pass cost in these different games. But you know, and perhaps it's a conversation for another time. But then you've got that Ubisoft Quartz raising its old head there as well, and you know,
no, don't say these words on this show.
Oh, I hope not, mate. I honestly hope not, but you know, it's something to ponder.
Yeah, that's like the dark side. You went there, and that's. I mean, we can be super optimistic, and we come from a place because we enjoy these games and we hope for the best.
That's true.
But yeah, we will have to wait and see, because like I think they've been pretty good with like a Far Cry where the microtransactions weren't that bad, and like a lot of people are like, oh, all the Helix items. I totally get that. But it's also like the sort of the mastery content drop, like the amount of effort went into that, and also the cool items that we actually got. If they then drop a pricey pack that you don't have to buy, you don't need it. Like the game is super easy, so why even buy like more powerful gear or whatever? So yeah.
I know, and this microtransactions is definitely a conversation for another time as well. But you know, they are making a huge amount of money from it. So, and that does fund the free content. So it'll be interesting to see.
The profit is insane. $20, like 1/3 of the game price for an armor set that like an artist made, and like the amount of effort versus like a full game.
I'm always surprised and shocked when I see the results in the investors' calls or like on the PowerPoint slides that they share with the profits that they do from the player recurrent investment, and it's crazy.
I'm sure we could talk about that for a long time.
Let's move on. I think.
Yeah, for sure.
We still have 2 topics, or I mean, we can just go.
Yeah, I think we covered Infinity, unless we have something else to.
If we're just moving on to Nexus, the last thing that I wanted to add for Infinity is that seemingly the rumors are talking about these stories, these multiple characters and stuff, that they should be connected. So this is my part, or the inner Assassin's Creed fan that I have. They're saying like, at least the pitch, or at least the rumors are saying that it's not only a cooperation to make the platform work well, but it seems that also the plan is for the games to be connected story-wise as well. So to play into what Andy mentioned earlier, maybe you can play characters, play the story of one character, and then move on to their son, to their children, or like seeing the story of like an entire family through time, like the Auditore family through time. That would be cool. If they're really able to nail this story connection and not just gameplay or visual connection, that might be the success that they might achieve for all kinds of fans. Because I can expect the hardcore fans to be ready to complain again. Like we are a happy bunch.
Definitely.
But real quick, wouldn't you want like prefer it if they would have more? Sure, they have to be connected in some way, but what really worked in Valhalla was that it was kind of contained in that game in a way. And what we're seeing, I think, like with, I would not be surprised if it was maybe better for some teams to just really focus on their own thing, make that really good.
Sure.
Instead of like having it to have connections with the content that came out in October of last year. Like, sure, there has to be like an overarching narrative, but for these smaller side stories, I would be fine if they were just like a one-off thing or something.
Oh yeah. No, what I meant is that I would like to see that they are connected with, as it is the case now, an overarching narrative, but at the same time, you do feel like every game, like we mentioned earlier, it's created on its own. It has to respect what was done earlier, but at the same time, it's always like, now we're doing this game, and now we're doing this game, and now we're doing this game. If this is the case where the games are connected and maybe they are planned in advance, not all of them at the same time, but if there's some kind of creative control over what is being done, so that the various stories that could be their own stories, of course, but they make sense within the grand scheme of things. It would be great, and I know that. How can you do that without making it a blank slate? Because of course, fans will expect it to still take into consideration, like to take what was established in the previous 12 or 15 years now into consideration. But how tough can that be?
Do you know what I think? This kind of new dynamic of jumping into micro stories also gives Ubisoft a good idea, because they have all the stats in front of them, right? They know how long people play for. They know the time spent, the money spent, etc. I think it's a great way for them to understand who we as the players connect with most in these new characters that they create, right? And if we have an affinity, or we really like the next Ezio, which perhaps they present towards us, then for them it's a great idea of where they can take a next longer game or invest more of their time if they know that a smaller storyline has really connected with a lot of people. It's kind of
what we're seeing with Basim in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I was about to say that.
Absolutely. People love Basim, and they've gone, right, like voice actor, like the story. Okay, let's go with this now. And if you know as a company that they already like this new character, then it's going to kind of sell itself in many respects, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So instead of just kind of going in with a big new game every time and then having that concern like, oh God, are they going to like the protagonist? Are they actually going? Oh no, it's going to be hit and miss. But if you're releasing a dozen different stories throughout the year, Nexus and Infinity, then it's a good way for them to say, right, who played for the longest? Who went back and played that again? How long did they spend? Did they spend money, etc.? Let's explore this character a little bit more now, because everything's telling us that people like him or her.
But why is Reda coming back all the time then?
Oh, dude, what an enigma! What an enigma! Oh, I hope we get
Gosh.
something on him this year. Actually,
Oh.
I hope
I
so.
don't know. I don't know anything, by the way, but I hope.
Oh, okay. Oh.
No, I wasn't hinting. I wasn't being like,
Oh,
guys,
okay.
guess what?
I mean,
video,
now that
video incoming. No, I haven't got anything, unfortunately.
with Dawn of Ragnarok, they established that there is something about him. So at some point, they will have to follow up on that. And again,
please,
Not.
man. I
Or
hope they
maybe
do.
we have to buy a board game. You never know.
Oh, I hope not, mate.
The
I hope
burn.
not. Oh, crumbs.
So we talked about Infinity enough, and I think that like Andy, you mentioned earlier, we could see a very little taste of the approach of Infinity in this new project, in this new VR project called or rumored or leaked called Assassin's Creed Nexus. Because I think I think all of us have discussed this, or Andy, maybe you haven't discussed this in.
Listen, I definitely think when it comes to Nexus, I've watched both of your videos, and if you're listening to this podcast and haven't, I would encourage you to go and watch Jordan and Marco's videos about Nexus. It's really informative. You both talk about some really interesting stuff. So I'm actually more interested to hear about what you two think about it, because I know both of you have done your research, and yeah, I want to know what your thoughts are on it, to be honest.
And it is an interesting project because it's a VR game that was rumored or leaked by Tom Henderson, and he's like Jason Schreier pretty much with rumors, and especially Ubisoft rumors again.
He only gives no shit. That's the difference. He's like, if I know anything, I'm gonna drop it. And Jason is more like, okay, this Infinity story, because first Jason was like Tom, but then now Jason is like, okay, this Infinity story has or the Rift, which he also leaked, has an interesting wrinkle because it was a Valhalla DLC. It turned into Rift. Ubisoft is not doing well. Like it has to be on Bloomberg, so there also has to be like for investors. It has to be interesting.
Yeah, sure.
While Tom is like, every small bit of info, drop it immediately.
Yeah.
And for us, that's interesting because we know about things beforehand. But I can imagine that for the developers, like because they're of course testing all these games, and I think you only get like a game for testing games. Like you're like these people, they never even met someone like in real life. They're just like at home. They can immediately like make a screenshot, send it to Tom, and then he drops it. And that's likely what happened. But
and yeah, so yeah, I agree that it doesn't feel great. It must not feel great for people working on this, like for all these rumors that are dropped. But
on the other hand, has there ever been an Assassin's Creed game that wasn't leaked? So
no,
yeah,
I don't think so. Was there?
I would love more communication, though. You know, more roadmaps official, because I think that kind of just stamps out the rumors and stuff. You know, I don't know if you remember a while. I think it was a couple months ago. They put out the incoming Helix packs. Now, you know, they're Helix packs at the end of the day. Don't get me wrong, right? But I would like something similar with actual official stuff. I know we do get the roadmap, but it is one picture in an Armory.
Would be cool if they like made a video for every month and then showed what was new every month. Because that would be amazing.
Yeah,
come on, they definitely can do that, because that's what
they did it with Odyssey.
They did it with Odyssey, and it was amazing.
Right. Well, I would love to. I'd love to have a little bit more communication in that front, because you know we're all passionate about this franchise and stuff, and we enjoy talking about it, obviously. But I mean, it would be good to talk about more official stuff more consistently. You know what I mean? And I think they can definitely do that. They can definitely do that.
And I do hope that they're going to mention this game, of course, when it's ready, because the information about Nexus, they do seem promising, especially compared to the other Assassin's Creed VR experiences. They're like what was mentioned by Tom Henderson is that there will be, or there might be, multiple assassins, multiple characters. So not only assassins, but like Ezio and Connor, but also Cassandra, Haytham, also some Templars that might work as main characters, which also means multiple settings. So it's not like a battle royale kind of thing. And in my notes, I wrote down that there should be 16 missions plus a tutorial, and the mission might be linear, which you would expect from a VR game, I would imagine.
20 minutes, I think both of you said. Did you say it was going to be around
that's
that?
right.
Yeah, 20 minutes. Which I'm not a huge VR player, but yeah,
Sure.
is it standard, or is it like Jordan? You mentioned it was a bit less than standard, like 20 minutes.
No. Yeah, like there's of course a difference between like the overall playtime and the time for missions. I think 20 minutes actually great, because then it means that you can just one night say, hey, I just want to hop into one mission, play it for 20 minutes, and then not be motion like completely crazy at the end of that. So and then you can choose to continue, or you played one mission, you succeeded. It's not like you have to drop out in the middle of it. It's just that the 16 times 20 minutes is like 5-6 hours. Which also average, like it of course depends on the price as well, but that's pretty good. I think the length is gonna be interesting, but I hope there are like some, which we also always see in Assassin's Creed games, collectibles, or just things to, or like a score for each level or something, like the mastery challenges maybe.
So you can replay.
I know we've talked about Infinity. I don't want to go too much into that again and stuff, but do you think that this kind of Nexus is another kind of trial to see, can we incorporate VR into this wider Infinity package later down the line? Because what I'm thinking is that, you have a lot of companies around the world, just thinking of Facebook or Meta, who are pumping huge amounts of their revenue into VR, into this metaverse, into the future. It's clear that a lot of other gaming companies, we've seen it with Horizon, right? With this upcoming VR game as well, they are starting to dip the toes into it. And I think as technology increases and gets better, I don't think this is going to be the first or last thing that we see when it comes to Assassin's Creed VR. But, food for thought, could this be tested, see how people react to it, see how it goes? And then perhaps, Jordan, as you were saying there, get rewards or get some sort of like a badge or profile on this Infinity package where it's clear that you've done all of the VR stuff, you've done all of this other stuff, and people can see those badges. Like Ubisoft Connect, they don't.
I don't think it will. Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, that you can also log into Ubisoft Connect in that client. I don't think if Infinity will have VR. I think this is very, very, very separate. Sure. Oculus likely went to them and they were like, "Hey, if you have a big sack of money, make us an exclusive, because it's not coming to PlayStation or to the HTC. I don't even know if that's still around, but to other headsets." And then Ubisoft was like, "Okay, we have to, like, what is Assassin's Creed? Well, we have these multiple characters, and sure, maybe the development team figured out, hey, people prefer the Ezio missions or whatever, and maybe we then see that in Infinity or some of the gameplay elements or something." But I overall think that it just started as a completely separate project. I do think it's interesting that, both games are kind of going in the same direction in a way where it's not just one setting anymore, which I think is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, it is super interesting in that regard. It's like a little taste, but at the same time, the gameplay that has been presented for this seems to improve, I think, on the other VR experiences that they did, because like there's more assassin stuff in there. So I've read something about apart from standard sword fighting and bow fighting that you get in a lot of VR games, there will be throwing knives, smoke bombs, crossbows, and also the hidden blade. That's something that I think that fans will look forward, and I personally will, because
the leap of faith.
And
sounds
the leap of
also
faith.
very good. That sounds very cool.
I like that in both of our videos we put that fan-made trailer about that VR Assassin's Creed from 2009 or something like that, where fans were like joking about an Assassin's Creed VR game, and there was that guy that fakes jumping for a leap of faith. But it's funny, like you mentioned in your video. Like I used it only for a joke in the video, but it's interesting what you said in yours, in that now some of those movements, some of those gestures, we will do in this game.
Yeah,
And
probably.
like
Of
Tom
course.
mentioned that you have to assume, like you have to have a T pose while playing to do the leap of faith. So it's kind of interesting, and I'm very interested in doing like he said that you have to flick your wrist to do the hidden blade.
Yeah, and they will hear the sound. Imagine that in
Yeah,
VR.
that
like,
would be so cool.
Oh, that would
would
be
be cool.
awesome.
That would.
But
be
yeah,
awesome.
I'm looking forward to the TikToks already coming out of this of people like falling on their face with their and the TV falling down and stuff like that.
Yeah. I can't wait to see the memes and the videos.
Yeah, that's gonna be cool. So yeah, this could be pretty big, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it's just a separate project. And if Oculus did not pay the money to get the exclusive, they probably would not have made it. Like I also think, and they, like you said, they already tried it, like with the VR rooms, where I think they're still like around. If you go to I'm not sure if they survived COVID, but if they're still around, you can likely go to one of these where you're like in a very big space. You're like with wires, and then you basically also run around in like a legit space instead of being in
I've
your
seen
home
that.
and being like stuck.
Yeah.
So they had like two for those. So they have been trying. Of course, they did a lot of other VR games when it was like first announced. Ubisoft always jumps on the next bandwagon,
Sure.
especially also the crappy ones like NFTs. But yeah, like I just think this is gonna be like a fun thing, and it's supposed to be coming out like in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
And there were already some people that tried it out. I think that posted.
Oh, you did
that
mention that. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I was like, okay, that's the only game that can be there, and like that is a game where you want people's feedback, right? And that they also have to really go to the studio, because you cannot put a VR headset on at home and stream the game. I would imagine.
No.
And yeah, you want that. See how people behave. See if they don't fall on the ground and stuff like that.
Yeah. I saw that you mentioned a fan going to Ubisoft Düsseldorf, which is one of the studios that are working on this. This kind of reminded me of when Ubisoft Düsseldorf called us to test the other AC experiences back in, was it 2019? And we
Really? Okay, it all makes sense now.
So it's I think that it's kind of like the same experience. Like back in 2019 or 18, they called us to test both the Escape the Lost Pyramid experience,
which was very cool, by the way.
Yeah,
Was
it
it
is.
fun?
They both are. Both that one and the Beyond the Medusa's Gate, the Odyssey experience.
Awesome.
They are very cool. Like those had to be played in teams. Like you have to be 4 or 6 people, because they are also interactive. Like it sorts you in couples, and you have to help your partner to do some of the stuff in the VR world, and those are very cool. Like the gestures that you had to do, they were very interesting. But there was not a lot of assassin-y stuff. There was a lot of climbing, which was pretty cool. It felt very real, but there was no combat. If maybe there was like the bow shooting and stuff like that, but there was no sword fighting, there was no hidden blade, there was no additional tools like smoke bombs. So I'm very curious to see how this is going to go, and if they called fans to the studio, it means that is going to be happening soon.
For sure. And I actually think about like this being more like the mastery challenges now, because you also have Cassandra that would be more of a bear challenge, you would think. And
oh yeah, sure. That's true.
So that's just my how it might be, right? How these
I can imagine
20 minutes, because like one of these challenges you do for master challenges could totally last 20 minutes as well if you really take your time.
Oh yeah, sure. So I guess they can mix and match the experiences that they have on the various activities and put them in this as well, because there's different characters means also different approaches to missions and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's awesome. And like you said, the previous ones were really focused on the new games that were out at the moment, which kind of made sense. But yeah, now they can have everything. And it's also great that it's the same team, right? They have this VR experience. They're now applying that to this AAA. That's what they said in the job posting game. So it should be pretty big. I'm not sure we will see it during that Ubisoft Forward event that will likely happen soon. But maybe later. Because maybe to round it out and just a question: what do we think we will see? Because I'm always of the question Valhalla DLC, if that's still coming, if there's still a Niflheim, because let's not forget that at E3 last year there was this video. We have multiple expansions planned for year 2. Is that still the case now that Basim is its own game?
I think
Or were there 2 mythical expansions planned? Because something I did not share yet is that I also asked pretty sneaky to one of the Dawn of Ragnarok directors, is this going to be the only time we can use the Onin powers? And then he was like, I see what you're doing here, and I cannot really answer that. So, they really made, but because that's what Ubisoft always does. They create, because all the a lot of resources for Dawn of Ragnarok went into these powers. So making a new DLC with the same powers, maybe they add 2 onto that, but you have the whole system already. And we always see them expand on systems, and that would make a future mythical DLC a bit cheaper, you would think, right?
Yeah, it does seem like an awful waste, as you mentioned earlier, Jordan, mate, in terms of creating this really cool, fun gameplay with the Dawn of Ragnarok, and then just to be like, oh, that's done. River Raids and Tombs of the Fallen now.
Yeah.
You know, it seems like we should expect more. And to be honest, I quite like the spells as we've discussed, and I wouldn't mind another DLC this year if we get a taster for what's to come next, or we get a good solid ending, and if the price is reasonable. I think that's the kind of main thing. I mean, whether it's Niflheim or something else, I'm not so sure, but I think you're right in saying we could potentially get that the reveal. Sure, I think that's definitely plausible. And if that's not the case, and if it's not a DLC, then they need to announce something in terms of ending Valhalla, and then they need to tell us what that is. And then in my opinion, it's in their best interest, with all these eyeballs on the screen, to then tease their next installment, their next game, that being kind of Rift. So in my opinion, I think we'll get 2 of those things. I know you guys mentioned about the Nexus being released in the next 12 months. I mean, it would make sense to me for them to kind of say something about it, but
I think it's more like an Oculus thing, maybe, that they have their own show or something, and it's for a completely different audience. I can see with all the things that they have going on, they could do an Assassin's Creed only stream at this point, right? Where they only announce AC stuff. Not sure if they're going to do that, but
it would be cool because they have so many projects, not only in the games department. They have so many transmedia releases going on at any point of every year since they started, pretty much. So it wouldn't be. I mean, they would have a lot of content to dedicate to a dedicated stream.
I think they've got a absolutely. I also think Ubisoft have got a lot of big things coming in June. I think they've been saving up a lot of things here. Well, we've got Skull and Bones. What's that? The Champions. Is it the Roller Champions? Roller Champs?
Yeah.
Yes.
Free to play. Yeah.
Isn't that ready to go as well? Then we've got an Assassin's Creed thing.
Going back to Assassin's Creed, don't you think that if there's a Valhalla DLC that they might, because if it's more of a let's name Far Cry as an example, if it's more like a New Dawn type experience, we usually see the announcement and the release very close. Dawn of Ragnarok, December, March. So if it's indeed in early 2023 or at the end, will they already need to announce it now when Valhalla is still going? Because usually when they talk about a new game, the other game is already ending.
Yeah, that's
and with Valhalla, we're still going. So maybe they want to end that first, and then in that DLC you get a small tease, or because it would be really weird if and that's why I'm super interested as well in what's gonna happen. If it's gonna be, hey, we have this massive DLC for Valhalla, it's gonna be awesome. Hey, a few months later, we won $60 again because we have this new game. That's gonna be weird. So if you don't know about the game yet, then it might be easier to sell the DLC.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you guys about you again. It was something that I was planning to ask you guys about this. Would you really expect an announcement for Rift now if they still have content for Valhalla. Do we really expect Ubisoft to have differentiated messaging in the coming months?
It's a good question. Maybe by announcing both of these things, they kind of cannibalize each other.
Exactly.
And in the average game, the average person who plays Assassin's Creed but is perhaps not as engaged as we are is like, well, what's the difference here? What's going on? Am I playing another DLC or am I playing as Basim? Because Basim was in Valhalla. So what is this?
Exactly.
So I can see the confusion there for sure. So perhaps we do get another DLC and it is cheaper, and at the end of this DLC presentation, we get a little tease like we did last year, where it's like Eivor's not done with Odin yet, with the Muspelheim kind of gate, or something along the lines of Basim, Eivor's finished, it's now Basim's turn kind of thing. So maybe something that would be more appropriate to kind of focus viewers and eyeballs onto the one thing that's coming next. And then as soon as that's done and dusted, the sales have been reaped. Okay, let's now start talking about early next year with this new game, roguelike game we've got coming out.
Exactly. I think that's going to be.
And what they did with the when Dawn of Ragnarok was announced the crossover content, and then we're going back to what I said earlier. Like, if the Tombs of the Fallen is indeed in June, around the announcement of the new DLC, and then you have something in Origins as well, like. That was also like kind of to, and now I'm just like, I don't think this is going to happen, but I mean, it is kind of like repeating itself. There are some things like falling in line with the Game Pass. Origins is getting 60 FPS. Tombs of the Fallen have some Origin stuff. Okay, that could all happen in June. Then we have Ubisoft Forward potentially in June. Maybe if you watch this already or listen to this, if that's already going to happen. And then they announced this Valhalla DLC, but right now you can play this amazing story and come back to Origin, like kind of like they did it with Dawn of Ragnarok. Maybe that's also the plan, but
we're gonna wait and see.
That makes a lot of sense to me, mate. I think you're spot on there, dude. Just purely because of the reception with everything that they did with that crossover. If it was successful, well, let's rinse and repeat that kind of method here, right?
Yeah,
I think
December was the best month for Valhalla, like in the post-launch when Cassandra dropped. So that's telling something.
Exactly.
And on that note, I think we can wrap up this special one-off podcast. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. It really was a chill but awesome chat. We talked about so many things about what the future might bring to the franchise. So do you guys have any final words or predictions for the future that you would like to add before we wrap up?
After you, Jordan.
Oh, you should I go first?
Do it.
Okay, yeah. So I already did some predictions. Like, again, that Origin stuff, that would be like amazing, but I'm not sure if that's gonna happen. I would be shocked if with Ubisoft's focus on this free-to-play market that they're not going to apply that to their biggest franchise. And with their like sort of they did multiplayer before. Why not bring that back? And it's kind of weird to see them like try all these battle royales. And I'm like, those are already out. An Assassin's Creed multiplayer game where you sneak with your friends through a city that expands over time or something. That would be amazing. And maybe that can like tie into Infinity. So it's kind of a hope and a prediction. Also because it would suck if Infinity was multiplayer focused, because that would really like nuke the story potential if you had like random people running around all the time, or you guy and you're like, I'm listening, trying to listen to the story, and this guy's like eating some Cheetos or something. You want to just so that's why I hope that they have a separate multiplayer experience, like the Warzone, right? And then the mainline games can just focus on being single player, because I think they showed that, and I think that Ubisoft doesn't get enough credit for that. How they are supporting a single player only game, that's insane. So I hope that they see that also as something that works, and that they also, of course, want to do multiplayer, have that be a separate thing. And we see that with Warzone, it's a separate client. It still ties into the mainline Call of Duty game very well. So I'm kind of hoping that we get like a multiplayer game.
I would love to see multiplayer coming back to AC.
Yeah,
Agreed.
Both competitive and co-op. Like I did love both types of multiplayer for AC in the past, especially the competitive one. I really love the one in Brotherhood. I spent so many hours on that game. I would like to see at least a modernized version of that kind of stealth kind of multiplayer. That was like incredible back then.
I agree with a lot of what you said there, mate. I'll build on that slightly in terms of just adding a few extra predictions I think would make sense. I think having that Battle Pass option in this kind of Infinity, where it's an offering that people can get extra stuff by partaking in these different stories within a season, and every new season we get a new iteration of different places that we can visit and different stories that we can explore. I also think that we're going to be seeing a lot of remakes as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw, AC1, but also some other favorites like Black Flag and others. I think that when they are remade, I wouldn't be surprised if you could log on to your Assassin's Creed Infinity client, just like you can do with Battle.net, and you've got your Black Ops, Vanguard, your Warzone, whatever it may be, and you can just choose which remake or which game or which Assassin's Creed thing, multiplayer included, that you want to dive into. So it's all this big Assassin's Creed universe in this one big package. I think I can definitely see that happening, and then it's quite easy for them going forward to just continually add new content and new games to that package, which is then whenever you load up the screen, it's right in front of your face. Just like with all these other free-to-play games that you mentioned, Jordan. I think
they had that in Odyssey. Actually, that was added for like basically what you're kind of describing, but then more tucked away. I think in the Helix shop or something, where it was like, check out these other games, and then you would like see the cinematic trailer play for. I think they skipped Syndicate, but it was Black Flag, Origins, and Valhalla.
Right, exactly.
Or in Unity, I think they skipped as well. So yeah, that was interesting.
And I could just see that happening, right? You log on and everything's in front of your face, and whatever's new or coming out, it's there. You hit with that cinematic, etc. I can see that happening. And then if you just want to play multiplayer, that's also there. Within that multiplayer, there's a battle pass equivalent of, and that applies to also different things or different seasons throughout the year. One thing that I would actually like to see in these games going on, so that's kind of building on what you said there, Jordan. I definitely see that happening, mate. But for me, I just want a quick shout out to Altair Stealth on YouTube. He mentioned something in a community post, which I would love to see. And it's quite similar to a mechanic he described in Jedi Fallen Order. I know, Mark, I don't know if you played that, but Jordan,
no. I was told to play it to prepare for Obi-Wan, but
I really enjoyed that game, mate. I 100%ed that, and in that you can actually create your own lightsaber. And Altair Stealth here is saying that can you imagine a mechanic where you can build your own hidden blade with different contraptions on it and really customize that and add a hook blade in there, or a phantom blade, or a pistol from one of the old games, depending upon what era you're in, or upgrade it slowly, which has different effects and etc. I think I would love to see some sort of hidden blade mechanic like that within this kind of RPG setting. I think that would be interesting. Awesome. I would quite like the idea of it, depending upon how you play. Maybe that's going to happen in Rift. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if there is going to be more stealth options in the future, or if they're going to bring back some rope darts, or the hook blade, or whatever it may be, there's loads of different contraptions over the years in lore. And Marco, I know you're well more versed in this than I am, but there is options there, and it would be great to have a lot of those mechanics reinjected.
Because of course they like with every game they always had a new version of the hidden blade. It was a mandatory thing, and then
exactly. So imagine customizing it, creating different colors, skins, dyes, with all the different contraptions on it that you yourself enjoy playing with, and then that also adds that unique depth to your own gameplay because of how you like to play. So I would love to see something like that. I think it would really change up and make it a very unique experience for people who love that iconic hidden blade in their Assassin's Creed games.
I already can see the item packs.
Oh, mate. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
That's also
add a dragon coming out the hidden
Yeah,
cave.
Oh
yeah.
no, please no.
Oh, for only
No.
20 quid, get yourself a dragon just
What?
erupting from your arm.
Whoa. You have these sort of elimination, like for example, I think in Apex Legends or something. What if you assassinate someone and then like fireworks happens? Or like I think that stuff is gonna happen.
Ooh.
That's
Oh mate, oh god. I started
no.
off. I thought I started off genuine there, but I can actually see that happening more than what I.
and we have to bring it back to reality, right?
Yeah, for sure. Oh dear. Anyway, that's my kind of predictions
Yeah,
alongside Jordan in terms of that Infinity stuff, and then something I'd like to see is hidden blade customization. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, cool.
They're both super interesting. I'm really, especially I'm really, I would like to see multiplayer coming back and this kind of integration that you mentioned also, Andy. That would be super interesting to see.
Sure.
We're gonna see in the next few years, because like the rumors talked about Infinity for 23 or 2024. Who knows?
Yeah, they want to have something big every year. That's like sort of that's
Yeah.
what they have been repeating every investor call. So
But-
it would be then.
But they also
this
have the
year,
TV
yeah.
series that have to come, like from Netflix and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Do you
yeah,
expect
probably.
those two? And that's my last question. Do you expect those TV series, the Netflix series, because there's going to be 3 of those? I think they mentioned. Will they overlap with games, or will they do as they did with the Assassin's Creed movie? Like 2016 was just the movie, no games, and then let's go back to the games.
I would love to see it personally. I think that would be really cool. But I like that kind of aspect anyway. But equally, I don't know. I wouldn't want it to be a TV series where you have to play the game to understand it, and vice versa. If that makes sense, I would prefer
Okay.
to see some integration, Easter eggs, and if you
Yeah, cameo or something.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So it's subtle, but it's still a standalone thing, because I think if you're going to niche down that much, you're not really going to get a good response. If someone's never played an Assassin's Creed game but is interested in this kind of
Yeah,
new
of course.
setting or whatever, and they're like, you jump straight in and it's just assumed that you know all this stuff, I think you're probably going to lose a lot of people. But I like it when they sneak in small things like that in
The
their
references,
TV series. Yeah, for sure. I would love to see something like that, but just not too heavy on it, to be honest.
Yeah. I also think that's the approach for the new games, right? Every game is like a new thing. So if the TV show would be linked to one game that would grow old over time, then people, because that's of course kind of what these companies want. They want people playing, because that's what we saw with The Witcher. They want people to watch the show, play the game, and the other way around. And if it's like linked to only one game,
Yeah,
I
of
think they're
course.
also limiting the potential of what it can be.
Of course.
Definitely. Am I right? Just on that, I know it was last question. I don't know we're wrapping up. But on the Netflix series, I swear that it was kind of leaked that it will be different eras throughout. It's not just going to be one story, right? I believe that's what I've
I don't
heard.
recall if it was leaked. Was it?
Maybe that. Right. Don't quote me on that one then. But don't
Maybe.
quite me on that one. Never mind. I'm going to review that myself.
The-
That also then adds into a lot of the things we've been discussing anyway. So I'm going to follow that up. I'm quite interested to see if it's like 2 episodes and then something changes. Or
I hope it's like
perhaps one-
Westworld. I'm not
Yeah,
sure if
that
that's
would be
what
cool.
that.
Yeah.
Like that it's like in the Wild West, and then then at the end they tease the next setting already or something, and then
Yeah, exactly.
it kind of goes
Yeah.
from there.
That would be
Anthony Hopkins
interesting.
was awesome in that. Anyways,
Okay. Anyway,
okay,
I think
I'm
that
not
was
sure-
it for the podcast.
yeah, mate.
Cool. We have nothing to discuss anymore.
Ah.
Please, Ubisoft, give us new info.
Yeah, I mean, the coming days are going to be fruitful, I think.
Yeah.
So, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Of course, you can find Jordan and Andy as Your Raptor and Andy Reloads on all social media. You can be found like that, right? On
Yeah, cheers,
pretty
mate,
much
yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Again, thank you guys so much for joining, and thank you all for watching and listening. Keep your eyes out on our channel and on the Access to the Animals social media for more content as we keep celebrating our 9th anniversary. Andy, Jordan, thank you all. It was amazing. Any last words? Otherwise, we can wrap up.
I just want to say thanks for sorting all this out, mate. I've had a really great time chatting to both of you about something we're passionate about. I know you said it's a one-off. I hope it happens again. I hope people enjoy us having a chinwag over all this stuff, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the year. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, same here. Thanks for. I thought it was, first of all, a great idea, and cool that people are looking forward to it. And yeah, I'm curious to hear like thoughts and stuff like that as well. And
absolutely.
maybe after like after the reveal or when we know more, we can like come back together. That would be
amazing.
Cool. And coffee on me.
Oh, you joker! You got me. Very good. Very good.
All right, thank you guys so much for the chat.
Yes, it was great.
Cheers,
and I'll
cheers,
see
man.
you all in our next video. Bye.
Bye.